Hi, I'm Eric, 34, and 3 months ago I discovered that while I was killing myself with double shifts to rebuild our savings, my wife was quietly burning through them on a nightlife I didn't even know she had. For a long time, I thought the exhaustion was worth it. I dragged myself home after 14-hour days, oil on my hands, soreness in my spine, that stale smell of a man who works too much, and I'd tell myself it was temporary. We dug into debt after a rough patch, and I believed we were climbing out of it together. She told me she was making small changes too, less online shopping, cooking more at home. Simple living, she called it. It should have worked. Between my job at the warehouse and the security shifts I picked up on weekends, we should have been growing a decent cushion, but every time I checked the joint account, the balance looked like it was dissolving, not dropping, dissolving, like water draining through a crack in the floorboards. At first, I blamed myself. Maybe I miscalculated the bills, maybe inflation was worse than I thought. Maybe life was just expensive and I'd somehow forgotten that. But then I started noticing patterns. Random $140 charges at places with names that sounded like cocktail lounges, Uber rides at 1:37 a.m., spa packages, booked on Tuesday nights when she always told me she was home watching a show or unwinding with tea. But she'd greet me at the door wearing a different perfume every week, hairstyled like she'd just come back from somewhere she didn't want to name. Whenever I asked, she had a new excuse ready, quick, smooth, practiced. Girl dinners. Mental health breaks. A treat after a long day. Something she forgot to mention. She'd laugh it off like I was being paranoid, kiss me on the cheek, and tell me she appreciated how hard I was working. That was the part that stung, the casual sweetness layered over lies. Then came the night everything snapped into place. I was sitting on the couch half asleep, still wearing my steel-toed boots, when her friend group chat lit up on our shared tablet. She'd left it charging on the kitchen counter. Normally I wouldn't look, I'm not the snooping type, but the preview notification caught my eye. Tonight's VIP list is perfect, she better not bail. VIP list. Not girl dinner. Not a small treat. I opened the tablet, hands still grimy from work, and scrolled. Photo after photo of women dressed like they were attending some exclusive rooftop event. Heels, glitter, velvet ropes. Then came the message that made my stomach twist. Tell Eric you're doing a self-care night again, he buys that every time. My chest went tight. Every time. They weren't even pretending anymore. This wasn't me miscalculating bills. This wasn't life being expensive. This was my wife living a second life on my labor, one she didn't even bother hiding well. I remember sitting there in my work uniform, my back aching, my hands still trembling from the machinery I'd been handling all day, staring at the screen like it belonged to someone else's life. That was the first moment I realized something ugly. I had no idea who my wife actually was once the sun went down. I didn't confront her that night. I didn't have the energy. I just sat there on that sagging couch, listening to the hum of the fridge and the ticking of the wall clock, waiting for a woman to come home who apparently didn't think she owed me the truth. And part of me knew, even before the real evidence appeared, that this was only the beginning of the unraveling. The next morning, she behaved like nothing was wrong. She was humming in the kitchen, barefoot, hair in a messy bun, scrolling her phone like a woman who'd gone to bed at 10 p.m., instead of stumbling in past midnight. When she caught me watching her, she flashed that soft, lazy smile, the one that used to warm me but now felt like a mask. Morning, she said, kissing my forehead. You're up early. I wasn't early, I'd never slept. She poured herself coffee, added too much creamer like always, and started talking about the weather, work, some shows she wanted us to watch together, filling the air with comfortable noise she assumed still worked on me. Meanwhile, the memory of her friend's messages kept replaying in my head like a bad commercial. Tell Eric it's a self-care night. He buys that every time. I watched her laugh at something on her screen, and something inside me twisted. For years I'd believed we were partners, that we were building a life side by side. It never once crossed my mind she could be slipping out the door the moment I clocked in for a night shift. Blowing through money I hadn't even earned yet, but I didn't bring it up. Not yet. I wanted the truth to come from her mouth, not the tablet. So I waited. Over the next week, I became someone I barely recognized, a man studying his wife like a stranger. I noticed her patterns with a clarity I'd somehow ignored before. Every evening, around the time I'd lace up my boots and head to work, she'd start doing her makeup. She'd call from the bathroom. It's just for me. I feel better when I look nice. But the smoky eyes and red lipstick didn't match the claimed pajama-empty nights. Her outfits changed too, shorts that glittered, tops that shimmered, heels she'd hidden in the back of the closet until recently. She'd spritz perfumes that probably cost more than my hourly wage and hurry past me with a breezy, "Love you, babe!" I wanted to ask where she was going. I wanted to demand honesty. But every time I opened my mouth, the words got stuck. Part of me hoped I was wrong. Part of me feared I wasn't. And the account charges only grew more suspicious. Bar delirium $98.50, velvet room entry $50, Uber $62.40, Moondrop Lounge $117. She once told me she just grabbed a juice with a friend. On the same night, 2 separate bar receipts appeared. I stared at her across the dinner table, nodding like a fool, while she twirled pasta around her fork and smiled like she still lived in the truth. But then came the day everything cracked. I came home earlier than usual after a machine failure shut the warehouse down. It was barely 10:30 p.m., and our house was quiet, lights off, blinds open, her shoes still neatly by the door. For a moment, I thought maybe she really was home tonight. Then I spotted her phone on the counter, buzzing nonstop. Group chat notifications, 3 in a row. Without touching it, the previews told me more than enough. "Where are you?" John's asking. "Everyone's here already, hurry!" She better not ditch us for her boring husband. Boring. That word didn't just sting, it carved something out of me. She'd chosen every late night, every lie, every dollar drained from the account, not because she was stressed, not because she needed space, but because she wanted excitement she didn't see in me. That was the moment something shifted. Not rage, not even betrayal, just clarity, cold, simple, unshakable. When she came home hours later, I knew I wouldn't be asking for explanations. I'd be asking for honesty. And whatever she said next would decide the future of everything. I didn't sleep at all after she came home that night. She slipped into bed smelling like perfume and other people's laughter, murmuring something about the night being fine, then passed out instantly. I lay there staring at the ceiling, replaying every charge, every lie, every group chat notification. By dawn, the decision was already forming in my mind, but I needed to hear the truth from her mouth. The next evening, I stayed home, claimed I felt sick. She didn't question it, just grabbed her curling iron, humming as she got ready, the same red lipstick, the same glittering top, the same heels she never wore. She called it a girls' night, but even she didn't bother pretending anymore. When she picked up her bag, I finally spoke. "Who's John?" She froze, slowly turned. Her eyes scanned me like she was measuring how much I knew. "Why are you going through my stuff?" she asked, voice sharp. "I didn't." Your tablet lit up. His name was everywhere. She rolled her eyes. "He's just a friend. You're blowing things out of proportion." I pulled up the photo her friend had sent. My wife leaning into John, his hand on her waist, her smile too raw and too real for a friend. Her face strained of color. "That's not what it looks like," she said quietly. "Then tell me what it looks like," I asked. Her silence was answer enough. Then the dam broke. "You're never home," she snapped. "You're always tired, serious, boring. I feel like I'm alone in this marriage. When I go out, I feel alive again. I feel like someone notices me. Someone, not me, someone else." And then she said it, the sentence that tore the last threads of hope out of my chest. "You were too much for anyone to want to spend time with you. What did you expect me to do?" I just stared at her, because in that moment, she wasn't my wife, she was a person who had been waiting for an excuse to rewrite her choices as my flaws. I said, "I expected you not to lie to me." She didn't have a comeback for that. For the first time in this entire mess, she looked afraid, not of losing me, but of losing the lifestyle I'd unknowingly funded. And I realized the turning point wasn't the picture. It wasn't Jon. It wasn't even the lies. It was hearing in her own voice that she'd already left this marriage long before I ever questioned her. I think what hurt me most wasn't the cheating itself. It was how calm she became once the truth was out, almost relieved, as if finally saying it out loud freed her from the obligation of pretending she cared. She sat down on the edge of the couch, arms crossed, eyes glassy. "Eric, you make this house feel like a prison. You work nonstop, you're exhausted all the time, and when you are home, you're quiet. I need fun, I need connection, I need more." More. That word stuck to my ribs. I'd been breaking my body to give us more. But she didn't mean money, she meant attention, excitement, a life where she felt like the main character, not a married woman with responsibilities. I kept my voice steady. "You could have talked to me," she scoffed. "Talking to you is like talking to a wall when you're tired. I didn't want to fight." "So you lied?" I said. I avoided drama, she corrected, like that somehow made her the reasonable one. I just stared at her, because every sentence she spoke made one thing clearer. She didn't feel guilty, she felt justified. The silence stretched. I watched her fidget, tapping her foot, twisting her ring, glancing toward the door like she wished this conversation would end so she could get back to whatever life she'd built without me. You know what the real problem is? She finally said. You expect me to be happy with the bare minimum. I want passion, I want adventures, I want to feel alive. And you think you'll find that with John? I asked. She hesitated, just a second, but it was enough. I don't know, she whispered. Maybe. There it was, the truth neither of us had the nerve to say out loud until now. This wasn't about a nightclub, or money, or one guy. She didn't want the life we had. She didn't want the man I was. She wanted out, just not the consequences that came with leaving. So I stood up slowly. Then you should go, I said. Because I'm done financing a life I'm not part of. Her eyes widened, not with heartbreak, with panic. Wait, Eric, don't do anything stupid. We share accounts, bills, rent. I can't just. I know, I said. That's why I'm ending the shared account tonight. Her breath itched. That was what truly terrified her. Not losing me, not losing the marriage, losing the money, the safety net, the lifestyle she built on the foundation of my exhaustion. She whispered, voice trembling. You're seriously choosing money over your wife? No, I said. I'm choosing self-respect over being your backup plan. For the first time since this began, she had nothing to say, and in that quiet, I realized she never expected me to find a backbone. She expected me to stay. But I wasn't that man anymore. I closed the joint account that same evening, not out of spite, out of survival. She hovered behind me while I clicked through the banking portal, pacing like a trapped animal, whispering arguments that contradicted each other every 30 seconds. Eric, please, we can fix this. You're overreacting. You're ruining everything. You're abandoning me. I just needed space. I just needed fun. You're being cruel. Every line was a fishing hook cast into the air, hoping one would snag me. None did. When the confirmation message appeared, account access updated, she froze behind me. I heard her inhale sharply, the kind of breath someone takes when they see a future collapsing in front of them. She tried a different tactic. The soft one. She sat down beside me, touched my knee lightly. Eric, where am I supposed to go? How am I supposed to keep up with everything on my own? We built this life together. No, I said. I built it, you lived in it. Her hand slipped off my knee. For the first time, she stopped talking. That silence was louder than any screaming match we could have had. She stared at the floor like it was suddenly unfamiliar, like she'd been pushed out of a world she thought she owned. Eventually, she whispered, I didn't think you'd actually leave. I looked at her, the woman I once loved more than anything, and realized she didn't mean me. She meant the money, the stability, the version of me she could walk all over because I worked too hard to fight back. I'm staying with Mason tonight, I said. You can have the place for now, but I'm filing separation paperwork this week. Her head snapped up. Separation? Eric, stop, we're not those people. This is just a rough patch. That's what people say right before the marriage is dead, I replied. She stood, panic rising, pacing the living room. You can't just throw away years together because I made a few mistakes. A few mistakes? I asked. You built an entire life behind my back. She didn't argue that point. She couldn't. I grabbed a duffel bag, tossed in enough for a few nights, and walked toward the door. She followed me all the way there, voice trembling. If you walk out now, you'll regret it. Don't do something you can't undo. I paused with my hand on the doorknob. This isn't something I'm undoing, I said. It's something I'm finally fixing. And then I walked out, down the stairs, out into the quiet night, breathing fresh air like it was the first real breath I'd taken in months. For the first time, I didn't feel tired. I felt free. But I also knew something. People like her never let go quietly. And the next part of this story wasn't going to be peaceful. Mason didn't even ask for details when I showed up at his place with a duffel bag, just popped open a beer, shoved it into my hand, and said, Start talking. I gave him the short version, leaving out the parts that still felt like open wounds. He listened quietly, occasionally clenching his jaw the way he did when suppressing the urge to fight someone. You're better off, he said finally. She checked out a long time ago. I knew he was right, but knowing didn't make the next morning easier. Because at 7 a.m. sharp, she called, then texted, Then called again. I ignored all of it until a message popped up that made my stomach drop. Rent is due. I don't have enough in my account. Right. She had built an entire lifestyle on the assumption that I'd always pick up the slack. I typed one sentence back. You'll need to cover your share until we settle things legally. I didn't even get to put the phone down before it buzzed again. You're actually doing this to me? After everything I gave up for us? Gave up? I nearly laughed. She hadn't given up anything. She'd added secret nights out, not sacrifices. Another message came through. If I get evicted, it'll be on you. There it was, the first threat disguised as vulnerability. Mason saw my face and raised an eyebrow. She's trying to guilt you? Trying, I said, tossing the phone aside. Not succeeding. But that wasn't the end of it. Over the next 2 days, she escalated. First came the emotional hooks. You're abandoning me. I can't believe the man I loved is gone. You're breaking my heart. Then came the blame. You pushed me away. You made me feel unwanted. You created this distance. And finally, the desperation. I'll change. I'll stop going out. I'll cut off my friends. Please don't do this. But every message felt like an echo of the same truth. She wanted the benefits of marriage without the commitment. And when emotional manipulation failed, she showed up at Mason's apartment, pounding on the door, yelling my name so loudly that neighbors peeked out from their blinds. Mason stepped in front of me instantly. Stay here. He cracked the door just enough to speak. You need to leave, he said. I need to talk to Eric. She insisted. No, he repeated. You need to leave before this gets messy. I saw her face through the small gap, red, furious, streaked with tears, not the grief of someone losing love, the panic of someone losing control. This isn't over, she said, voice trembling, and the door slammed shut. Mason locked it, looked at me, and exhaled. She's spiraling. I nodded. I know. Because people like her didn't fade quietly. They escalated. They clawed. They tried to make you pay for walking away. And deep down, I knew she was only just getting started. The next wave didn't come from her directly. It came from a number I didn't recognize at first. I picked up expecting a spam caller. Instead, I heard a man's voice. Eric? This is Daniel from Westview Apartments. We need to talk about your wife. My stomach dropped. Ex-wife. I corrected automatically. What happened? Daniel sighed the way landlords do when they've dealt with one disaster too many. She came into the leasing office today saying you'd abandoned her financially. She demanded we remove your name from the lease immediately and transfer everything to her. When we told her that's not how it works, she caused a scene. Define scene, I asked, bracing myself. She knocked over our sign-in stand and accused my receptionist of conspiring with you. Security escorted her out. I rubbed my forehead. I'm sorry you had to deal with that. She also said she would make sure you regret this. So, consider this a courtesy call. I hung up, feeling the familiar tightness behind my ribs, the warning signal that something worse was coming. I didn't wait long for confirmation. Within an hour, I got a notification from my bank, attempted login from unknown device. Then another. Then another. She was trying to get into my personal accounts now. I changed passwords, added two-factor authentication, locked everything down. Mason watched me with the grim patience of a man who'd seen breakups turn into battlegrounds before. Eric, he said, leaning forward. You need to protect yourself legally. I'm filing tomorrow, I said. Separation, financial boundaries, everything. But I underestimated her capacity for chaos. That night, around 10 p.m., I got a knock on the door, not a normal knock, the kind that rattled the frame. I checked the peephole. Two police officers. My blood ran cold. I opened the door slowly. Officers? Are you Eric Taylor? The older one asked. Yes. We received a report from your wife that you threatened her and emptied your joint accounts to leave her homeless. Mason let out a sharp laugh behind me. Are you kidding? The officers didn't react. We need to hear your side. I explained everything calmly. The separation, the financial boundaries, the evidence of her spending, the messages, her showing up here screaming earlier. Mason backed me up, even offered his phone with the video he'd recorded of her pounding on the door. After reviewing it, the older officer nodded. Looks like she left out a few details. You don't say. Mason muttered. The officers apologized for the inconvenience and told me they'd handle the false report. But as they left, one of them added quietly. She seems volatile, be careful. I closed the door and leaned against it, finally feeling the weight of everything settle onto my shoulders. This wasn't about a broken marriage anymore. This was about self-preservation. Because she wasn't just spiraling, she was trying to pull me down with her, and some part of me knew the final blow hadn't landed yet. I filed the separation papers the next morning, clean, direct, unemotional. As much as she tried to drag me into chaos, I refused to follow her there. I expected rage, expected another door-pounding meltdown or a fresh round of lies sent to police or landlords. But instead, she went quiet, silent enough that, for a moment, I questioned whether the storm had finally blown itself out. Mason didn't buy it. "Silence isn't peace," he said. "It's preparation." He was right. 2 days later, she showed up at the cafe across from my job, not screaming, not crying, not angry, calm, too calm. She slid into the seat across from me like we were old friends catching up. "Eric," she began, voice soft, almost gentle. "I'm sorry I've been spiraling. I was scared. I didn't know how to handle losing everything at once." I waited. Because apologies from her always came with a hook. "I know I messed up," she continued. "But we can start over, we can fix this. I'll stop going out, I'll cut off my friends, I'll go to counseling, whatever you want." There was a time when that speech would have broken me, when I would have clung to any hint of remorse, but now I saw it for what it was, fear of losing the life she enjoyed, not fear of losing me. "I don't want to fix it," I said simply. Her smile cracked, just slightly. "You're serious?" "Dead serious." The calm drained from her face, replaced by hurt, anger, disbelief, all flickering too fast to seem real. "You'll regret this," she said quietly. "I already regretted staying." I replied. I stood, left a tip on the table out of habit, and walked out. No yelling followed me. No chase. No more scenes. When I reached the sidewalk, I felt something I hadn't felt in months, maybe years. Relief. Not explosive, not triumphant, just lightness, a door closing that should have closed long ago. That night I slept deeply, peacefully. The next morning, I blocked her number, deleted old messages, and opened a new account, one with only my name on it. A fresh start. Not loud, not dramatic, just mine. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't tired. I wasn't angry. I wasn't confused. I was free.